Most beginner investors don't lose money because they picked a bad deal. They lose money because they missed something obvious. Not obvious after the fact, obvious before they bought it. I've seen people buy properties that look like a great deal on paper, only to realize later the location kills their tenant pool, the layout makes it impossible to rent, or the repairs quietly spiral way out of budget. And by the time they figure it out, it's too late. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the real red flags I've seen over decades of buying, flipping, and renting properties. The ones most investors completely overlook. Let's start with the biggest one, location. And no, I'm not just talking about good versus bad neighborhoods. That's too basic. I'm talking about the subtle location issues that quietly kill deals. Here's one. Property surrounded by rentals. Now, that might sound weird because you're buying a rental, but here's the problem. When a neighborhood is saturated with rentals, especially poorly managed ones, tenant quality tends to drop, turnover increases, property values stagnate. I've bought in areas like this early on, and what happens is you're constantly fighting the environment. You fix your property up nice, but the house next door has junk cars and trash in the yard. That affects your rent. Another one people miss, being too close to commercial zones. Things like busy intersections, gas stations, industrial buildings. They might not bother you at first glance, but tenants care. Families especially don't want traffic noise, safety concerns, or lack of privacy. And if your tenant pool shrinks, your vacancy risk goes up. Bottom line, if the area limits your tenant pool, you're taking on hidden risk. This one is simple, but it gets ignored all the time. No parking, no deal. Or at least you better get a steep discount. Here's what I mean. No driveway, no garage, street parking only, especially crowded streets. On paper, it doesn't seem like a huge issue, but in real life, it's one of the biggest tenant complaints. I've had tenants pass on otherwise solid properties just because where am I supposed to park? And it gets worse in multifamily properties, no heavy areas, tight urban neighborhood. Now, here's where beginners get it wrong. They assume someone will rent it. Yeah, someone will rent it, but not your best tenants. And that means lower rent, more turnover, more headaches. This is where deals really go sideways. The stuff you don't see. Anyone can walk in through a property and notice old carpet, outdated kitchen, ugly paint. That's easy. The real problems are foundation issues, sewer line problems, electrical nightmares, plumbing that's been patched 12 different times. And here's a real world example. I once looked at a property that seemed like a great deal. Numbers worked, price was right, but I had my contractor walk with me. Within 10 minutes, he said, "This house has been pieced together over 30 years. Nothing matches." And what that means is every repair becomes harder and more expensive because nothing is standard. That's what beginners miss. They budget 5,000 for repairs, maybe 10 if they're cautious, but the rally ends up being 20,000, 30,000, or worse. Pro tip from experience. If a house looks like it's been fixed up multiple times over the years, that's not a good sign. That's a warning. This one doesn't get talked about enough. Layout matters more than finishes. You can have a beautifully renovated property, but if the layout is weird, tenants will walk. And here's what to watch for. Bedrooms you have to walk through to access another bedroom. Bathrooms only accessible through a bedroom. Kitchens cut off in strange ways. No clear living space. I've seen properties where to get to bedroom number 2, you have to walk through bedroom number 1. That's not a 2-bedroom, that's a 1-bedroom with a problem. And tenants know it. Another big one, no functional flow. Families want open or semi-open spaces, clear separation between living and sleeping areas. Practical use of space. If the layout feels awkward, it is awkward, and that affects the rent price, the tenant quality, time on market. You don't want to be explaining a layout to every potential renter. This is where beginners burn money trying to do it right. They walk into a rough property and think, I'm going to make this the nicest house on the block. Sounds good, but it's usually a mistake because rental properties are about return, not perfection. Here's what happens. You install high-end finishes, you upgrade beyond the neighborhood standard, you spend way more than necessary, and then the rent doesn't justify it. I've seen investors put granite everywhere, premium flooring, top-tier appliances in a neighborhood where tenants just want clean, safe, functional. That's it. And the worst part, high-end finishes often mean higher maintenance, more wear and tear issues, more expensive repairs later. The rule: match the property to the neighborhood, not your personal taste. If a deal looks too clean, too easy, too perfect, slow down, because there's usually something behind it. I've seen listings where the price seems low, the photos look great, and the numbers appear to work perfectly. And then you dig deeper and find it's next to a noisy commercial property, there's a zoning issue, the tenant situation is a mess, or there are structural concerns not disclosed up front. This is where experience and skepticism comes in. Beginners tend to get excited, experienced investors get cautious. And this one is subtle, but important. Every property attracts a certain type of tenant. If the property doesn't align with the tenant you want, you're going to struggle. For example, a small one-bedroom in a family-heavy area, a large home in a high transient rental zone, a property with no yard where families expect one. You have to think, who is going to live here? And more importantly, is this the type of tenant I want? Because the wrong match leads to vacancy, turnover, constant issues. This is a big one. Your contractor might tell you things most investors ignore. Listen to them. I've worked with contractors for decades, and they can spot issues instantly. This wall has been opened before. That wiring is up to code. This plumbing is going to fail soon. But here's what beginners do. They hear it and then they rationalize it away because they want the deal. Don't do that. If your contractor is hesitant, you should be more hesitant. This might be the biggest red flag of all. When you start justifying the deal, you'll catch yourself thinking, I can make this work. It's not that bad. I'll figure it out later. That's not analysis. That's emotional. And emotion is expensive in real estate. Every bad deal I've seen, mine included, started with ignoring the red flag. Before you buy any rental, run through this. Does the location limit my tenant pool? Is parking an issue? Are there hidden repairs I might be underestimating? Does the layout make sense? Am I over improving for the area? Does this feel too easy? Who's my ideal tenant and does this property attract them? What is my contractor telling me? Am I being emotional about this purchase? If even 2 to 3 of these raise concern, you need to slow down. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Real estate isn't about finding deals, it's about avoiding bad ones. If you can consistently avoid bad deals, the good ones take care of themselves. Now, if you're in the Omaha or Southwest Iowa area and you want a second set of eyes on a deal before you pull the trigger, that's something I help people with all the time. No pressure, no obligation, just real world feedback based on what actually works. And if you found this helpful, hit the thumbs up and make sure you subscribe because I break down real estate in a way that actually protects people, not just sells you the dream. I'll see you in the next video.